My guest today is Steven Perchikov. He is the CEO of the Art of Sales Academy. He's a business development expert focused on helping B2B consultants, agencies, and tech companies drive more pipeline, close more deals. Steven has helped high growth startups drive millions of dollars of pipeline and opportunity to their business. He's also helped hundreds of consultants, coaches, and agencies find their irresistible hook and execute a strategy to turn apathy into intrigue and intrigue into revenue. Working alongside his clients, Steven and his team become an integral, commercially focused part of your team. So in today's interview, Steven talks a lot about LinkedIn strategies, which includes a couple of things that I think you're going to find super helpful. Scalable personalization, and what he calls mythic content. And he gives some very clear examples of what each of these is and how you can do it too. So let's jump right in. So thank you so much, Steve, for taking time to talk to me today. I'm excited to hear about, there's a lot of things I want to ask you. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Linda. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And speaking of fun, so I ask all my guests, like, what is something that's kind of unusual or a hobby that you like? And you had talked about, you mentioned kite surfing. I'm not even exactly sure what that is. Can you tell me, what is that exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a new hobby for me. I'm still only about a year in, but it's a lot of fun. Basically, you're riding board like a snowboard in the ocean or a river or a lake or whatever it is. And you're using a really large parachute that's attached to your body and leveraging the wind to move whichever direction you want to go, to jump, to do tricks, all of these sorts of things. So it's like a really fun way to spend some time outside. And I happen to have a really nice group of friends who really got into it, and everybody kind of pushed each other to get into it. So it's been a cool thing to do together.
Is it like windsurfing? Or is it completely different?
I think it's like windsurfing. Windsurfing, you're on kind of a surfboard with a sail, right? Okay. That's windsurfing. Kite surfing is you're on, let's say, a surfboard or like a snowboard kind of tablet, and you have a kite and it's high up in the air and you're kind of maneuvering the kite in the air and it's pulling you. Whereas the windsurfing, you're almost like on a mini surfing sailboat. So that's a slight difference.
Those are two things I will probably never do. So just
but both require wind. They both require wind. So you'll often see them together in the same place. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not a real, do you do it like in the ocean? Because there's sharks in there. I'm just not.
I get it. I know. Yeah. I was stuck in the middle of the ocean. I fell off and I had to release my kite, and I was just kind of stuck for like an hour in the ocean. And I was thinking about, is there sharks here? I don't know. I've never been to the Dominican Republic. It's like until a boat got me. So these are like some of the fun things that can happen.
Yeah, just not big on water sports in that way. But yeah, so just to get into this, so you're a business development expert. Can you talk a little bit about exactly what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with B2B businesses, often they're software companies, consultancies, recruiting companies, SMBs, all of these sorts of things. And we help them primarily with lead generation is probably the main thing that we help them with. And our special angle around that is being really good at communication, being really good at setting up audiences and lists, and using a little bit of technology to help amplify their efforts in order to get more opportunities created. We help with other stuff, sales training and consulting, but a lot of times that's where it starts. And we use LinkedIn and email and cold callers and all these sort of things as part of our process.
Oh, and when did you start your business?
About 4.5 years ago at this point. So It's been a while.
So right before the pandemic, did that dramatically change things, like where you were heading with the business when it hit?
Yeah, well, I probably had my first clients in 2018. Okay. So there was some momentum going there for a while. And then the pandemic hit, and it was definitely like for everybody else, like a holy moly kind of moment. And I did have some clients drop off, specifically clients who had sold like virtual reality machines to casinos and things like clearly you're not in business for the time being. You don't need us So that was a little scary, but it actually very quickly picked up thereafter because so many businesses were moving to remote selling. And that's essentially what we were helping them do. Remote selling, LinkedIn, less in-person meetings, all these sorts of things that I had already been doing for many years prior to COVID. So our business actually had our best year in 2020 and then a better year than that after 2021.
Wow. So you kind of had a jump on approaches that probably other businesses had to adapt to, like everyone else that was in person, or like I know people who were speakers. There was no events going on. So they,
Exactly. Yeah. Got lucky in that regard.
Wow. Yeah. And at least it wasn't like the Peloton thing where they had that huge, increase. Everyone was biking at home and buying their bikes. And now they're renting them out and they're trying to get rid of them. And
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would have been happy to ride the Peloton wave if I was buying Peloton stock at the time. It would have been fine.
Yeah. It's just interesting how some of those businesses, though, they were
bubbled.
Super important. Yeah. And then everything burst and that was You mentioned LinkedIn a couple times. So let's get into that for a minute because I'm really big on LinkedIn and parts of this will also be appearing on LinkedIn, this interview. So what is the best approach? You hear all different approaches for LinkedIn. And what do you think is the best approach for outreach these days?
What we teach and what we implement is this idea of scalable personalization. And what that essentially means is how can you use bit of technology to send messages to 50 people, 100 people, what have you, but make it seem like that the message was handwritten. That's scalable personalization because there's tools out there. You use them. You don't use them well. You're going to burn a lot of bridges, but you still might get some sales, but you're going to really waste your efforts. And then of course you can do the old school thing of just doing everything by hand, just hustle, and that'll work too, but you'll get tired and burn yourself out and you won't be using all the resources that are available to you. So what's that in between balance? Scalable personalization. How does it work? It works by thinking very carefully around who you want to target, how you want to target them, and preparing well beforehand before you set any kind of automation in place, have the right messaging, have the right strategy. One example is, who is predominantly your audience? Like I can have many examples from all verticals. So I can try to give the best.
B2B SaaS. So some tech companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I worked with a B2B SaaS company not too long ago, and they specialized in helping banks. They had a software that had many features. I was helping them with their go-to-market strategy, but they weren't sure what to focus on in order to grow their business. So my team and I analyzed their software and all the things it can do. It can do chat. It can ingest documents. It can do all sorts of things. And it was geared towards the financial industry. So when we looked at it, we saw one specific thing that it was able to do was help transition all the documentation in the banking world from SOFR to LIBOR, which was a major transition going on across all of their paperwork and contracts and all of these sorts of things. And their tool could ingest all their contracts and make the right changes and all of these sorts of things. And this was a good thing to focus on. We decided to focus on that because there was, number one, urgency. This had to be done by the end of the year for all these financial institutions. So there was a rush. Two, it wasn't easy to do. It was a lot of paperwork. And three, targeting was easy because we searched LinkedIn and we saw that in all of these banks and even in consultancies, they all had these titles like head of LIBOR transition, head of SOFR transition. So they had these very specific titles that weren't being targeted very much. Mm-hmm. And you, as a B2B copywriter, know all about this stuff. So when you get the right audience and you get all of these things, you can really target them well. So we focused on that. We created these audiences, and then we positioned the CEO as a real thought leader in that space. And we just sent really simple messages like, hey, great to connect into your background at Chase Bank. I saw your focus in SOFR and LIBOR. I'm in a similar space too, which is part of why I'm reaching out. Wanted to get your take on this. We've developed a solution that helps Fortune 500, Fortune 100 banks make the transition from SOFR to LIBOR in hours rather than days for all of the documents that they're looking at. We'd love to get your take on it, learn more about you. That's so specific. Like nobody's reaching out to these guys about this specific tool. No one's reaching out to them on LinkedIn, period. They're not like the people who get hit up a lot on LinkedIn have like titles like yours and mine. They're CEOs, they're founders, they're owners. But Sofer Labor guy at a bank, not hitting up very much. So we opened a lot of doors for them, and they're one of our most successful clients. They saw 7 figures of realized revenue within their first 6 months of working together, and they were a completely new software.
That is amazing. And it's such a great example for so many reasons. One is that you were very specific, like you said. Mm-hmm. And you also, you knew what their differentiating factor and value proposition was compared to probably their competitors. No one else was doing that. Are these like a format or a platform or something that they had to transition to? Is that what I don't know what those acronyms are with the words?
Yeah, it was legal stuff. So, okay. But it was legal stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, it was complicated. So immediately you're taking away all that pain. For me, it's like, I'm thinking how I had a new website done, and I had to, there was some software I was using at the time, it was a couple of years ago, and I wanted to switch to a different software, but it was such a hassle. And the company I went with was one that said, we will do all of that for you. And it was like, take it. I think they regretted it because it was a huge mess. But the fact that somebody could take that over and I didn't have a headache, it's huge. So
exactly. Yeah.
How long did it take for you to kind of hone in on, would you remember how long it took to just find what their special?
Yeah, it just took anybody we work with, they fill out an onboarding document first, and the questions are designed to elicit everything we need to know about their business in order to create the best sort of strategy possible. So that helps. And then we had maybe 2 or 3 more phone calls together, and then we kind of nailed it down. And I was really fishing. Some people understand what I'm doing more than others. This was a technical team, so I really had to fish with them a little bit and really tell them, here's what I'm trying to do. Help me think like this. And then they suggested this Sofer Library thing as they understood like why we're trying to find this hook and what a hook even is and all these sorts of things. And that's really unlocked the doors.
And that was largely through LinkedIn, you said?
Yeah, we used LinkedIn in that campaign. Yeah.
So just direct messaging?
Yeah. We set up maybe a 6 message sequence, 3 or 4 messages on LinkedIn, and then 2 or 3 messages following up via email. Most of the results did come from LinkedIn in this particular campaign. And then our team handled their inbox, the back and forth conversation, and scheduled calls on their calendar.
So did you see a difference in a response from email versus direct messaging? Because not everyone is on LinkedIn a lot, especially people that, and most people aren't.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why I think it's important to use some of these filters that Sales Navigator has.
Yeah.
If you're using Sales Navigator, there's filters like posted on LinkedIn in the last 30 days or changed job in the last 90 days. These are all kind of indicative of these people being engaged and active on the platform. So we did leverage some of those filters to help. But in general, even though not everybody's on LinkedIn, they're still just much more responsive than email these days. Just people are tired of impersonal cold emails. The cool thing about LinkedIn is that if they like your profile, if the headline makes sense, they can clearly just look at your LinkedIn and see that you're a real person. You've done these things. Just makes it more social and easier to say yes to a conversation.
Right. Yeah. Because there's that term you probably heard called pitch slapping. It's like when everyone, as soon as you accept an invitation,
I never heard that before.
All day long. And it's like, have you even seen my profile? Like, do you even know what I do? And the thing is, people are always talking on LinkedIn about don't do this, don't pitch slap. But the people who are doing it aren't reading. They're not really on LinkedIn, because if they were, I don't think they would do it. Yeah, it's such a negative thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I do think that LinkedIn is a place where people are looking to do business. I do think that building relationships on LinkedIn is difficult, and it's better to build a relationship in person, on a phone call, all these sorts of things. So you can transition towards a conversation and do that. But it's true that it's a fine line between saying the kind of message that gets people to say yes and standing above the noise and feeling like they want to speak with you because you have something really interesting to offer and you're an esteemed person, versus just spamming them. And they're very different things. And I think people sometimes can't tell the difference between the two.
Yeah. And I think they just throw out messages to everyone, randomly. Was there a distinct call to action? Like when you would send these messages out, was it ending with a question like, can I contact you? Or was it a distinct contact
Yeah.
us?
Yes. So all of our messages kind of follow a certain format, especially the first one, which is the most important one. If we're going for direct calls, you really want to make the first few sentences as personalized as possible. So if you say something like reading your SOFR background, I also work in SOFR on the technology side. As a first sentence, you kind of can't get more specific than that. You could talk about their college and all that, but those things don't help. Like this actually is hyper specific in this case. And then the middle part is really trying to make things super tantalizing, not necessarily pitching, but just kind of mentioning what you do in a tantalizing, intriguing way. Like, these people were like, whoa, like you actually have a technology for my little niche of the world of what I'm doing. Like that can help us, help our team. That's unique in and of itself. And then you kind of end it softly. You don't say like, I'd love to show you how it works or anything like that. You kind of say like, anyway, I'd love to get your take on it, learn more about you and build a relationship. So that ends it kind of softly, but the middle piece is like the dynamite and the sizzle. As long as you have the dynamite and the sizzle, you can do a kind of takeaway and be a little soft. And then the conversation, and it's much easier to say yes to you. And then the conversation becomes about what you want to talk about without them feeling like they're about to enter into the pitch zone, into the pitch slaps.
No one wants that. I know.
Yeah.
Now, when you find the people, because I just signed up for Sales Navigator, I haven't used it that much. I mean, I'm just a single entrepreneur, so I don't, I'm not somebody who's going to send out like 50 email. I mean, I'm not comfortable with it. I don't need 50 clients, but how do you, like, what level of connection are you with these people? And is it coming from the business, the company, or is it coming from an individual?
It is coming from an individual. It's never coming from the company. It's always coming from either the CEO or a salesperson within the organization, something like this.
Okay. And are they first connections? Because I don't even know. I think with Sales Navigator, you can send a message to any level connection. I'm not really sure. I haven't used that yet.
Yeah, we do like to leverage first degree connections when possible. If they have a number of first degree connections that they haven't reached out to in a long time, and with the right kind of message and offer, that can usually lend itself to a lot of opportunities. We call that hidden pockets of profit baked into the organization. So we try to uncover that. The second, then going after new connections is sort of the second piece that we'll do. The new connections, you can't really just message anyone. You can use in-mails, and I think you get 50 or 100 a month, but in-mails are highly ineffective. You're much more better off connecting with people. So connecting with 50 to 100 people a day, and then sending those people messages after they accept. That's going to get you much better traction than relying too much on emails.
Yeah. Well, what do you think are some mistakes that people make when they're using this, like a similar approach?
Some people find automation tools and then they just think that that's the key, and they just blast and they end up burning a lot of bridges. They don't send the right messages to the right people. They don't think and put themselves into the shoes and the minds and the feelings of who they actually want to connect and relate with. If you don't do those things, then your messages won't resonate as well. Others may just not know, like, what's on a higher, more meta level. They may just not know, like, what's the exact hook for their business and for whom. How do you find it? How do you give it? How do you position it? Those sort of things. So that's sort of like the table stakes of getting this to work, and more high level strategic level. So if you can figure that out, then a lot of other stuff falls into place.
Yeah, that makes sense. So a lot of it sounds like you have to do research on your end. I mean, that's what copywriting. I mean, it's all about.
Of course.
Yeah. Finding out what, and like you said, meeting with the client, really getting into like with discovery calls for me, it's like digging into a lot of the questions they don't ask themselves. When you're in a business yourself, you tend to not see what you assume people know more than they do, for one. And then, you're not, it's like I always say, I had heard this somewhere where people within companies inhale their own fumes, meaning that they are all in a boardroom and let's come up with some great value proposition. And yet they're all just patting each other on the back for having something witty to say, when actually it has nothing to do with like I always ask my clients, when you're when your customer wakes up, is that the question that they're looking for? And, like when I look at their headline, because usually the hero section, big section on a landing page has nothing to do with what that person, it's something that the people working in the company think their customer wants, but it's not actually an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So when your customer wakes up, is that what's on their mind? And usually it's silly. So it's like, no. So why is it there? Is the question. And you use something, I don't even know what it is. What is mythic content?
First piece of what I was mentioning was this idea of scalable personalization. That's one leg of the chair. The other leg is mythic content. Mythic content is my philosophy to content, especially on LinkedIn, and we use it on email and Facebook as well. And it works better than pretty much anything we've tried. And the idea is telling stories that place your ideal prospect into the role of the hero and yourself as the guide. So you meet them where they are. You really show that you understand where they are. Mm-hmm. You create a bit of tension and conflict, and perhaps mention a common objection or a limiting belief. And you dispel that through a narrative, through a story, so that, someone who's watching that enough from your target market starts to slowly have their mind opened and feeling like they're understood by you, so that they actually would like to work with you.
Well, on that subject then, do you have like 3 tips on how a person could create mythic content? Like say it's on LinkedIn.
So first of all, I do have an ebook that I can send to you, and maybe you want to share it with me. I don't think I have a downloadable place on the site. I usually just send it to the clients and things like this, but it has 12 posts that we've written, each of which have directly led to client engagements, and breaks them down line by line so you can use them as templates for yourself. So that would be helpful to anybody who wants to do that. But on a higher level, the way to do it is, one, you'd either tell a story of a client or you tell a story about yourself. So let's say a software CEO or software founder or something like this, or, some of the posts that maybe I used. So I might start like, I just got off the phone with a client I just got off the phone with the head of sales at a, mid-sized software company. And he told me what I had already suspected. Used to be that sales was the hard part and getting leads was the easy part. Now, sales is the easier part and getting opportunities created is the harder part. The game has changed. And yet the majority of salespeople at software companies are sophisticated, senior level executives who know their products in and out and understand the sales process in and out, but are not updated or know what it takes to do the block and tackle to get the right opportunities created on their calendars. This is a big problem. Mm-hmm. Without this, their skills don't matter. Mm-hmm. So this is part of why. And so then I'll say, like, this is part of why we're in business. We work closely with SaaS companies to figure out the right messaging, the right hook, the right offer to break the doors wide open for what they're looking to do. So that's like would be a mythic content, right? I'm speaking anybody in SaaS who's like has a sales team that's like in their 40s or 50s, who's really knowledgeable. They likely don't know how to get leads. I know this because I know my market. That's like who I want to be speaking to. And I'll tell a story that would be relevant in like all of those organizations that would be listening.
That's great. Because what I like about that is it's not like a random story about just a general concept that, a lot of people could relate to, but it's very specific so that that the people who are interested in that are the people you're trying to attract. So that's
exactly.
Yeah, because storytelling is all over the internet. And I've talked about it. I've had people, on this podcast that have talked about it, and it always works, but it's a question of like, how do you actually use it in business can be kind of,
Totally.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So this has been great. Where can people find you and find out more about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the site is www.artofsalesacademy.com. My name is Steven Perchikov. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on the website. On the site itself, there's a button that says get started. So that's a place you can book a call with myself or someone on my team. And also welcome to shoot an email to steven@artofsalesacademy.com. So these are just a few places where I can be found.
They're all over. Well, thank you so much. It's been great. And it's such a jam-packed interview full of great information. I certainly learned a lot. So thanks again, Stephen, for taking time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Linda.